Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is polarity and balance. And it seems, it seems like a contradiction to be talking about polarity and balance in the same sentence, but in a way, what is balance? It's constantly readjusting, recalibrating to find balance. Balance is not a static state. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. It's great to be here with you this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started on our conversation around polarity and balance, let's take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your molecules, your electrons, your cells, and lighting you up with this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. As you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Rub your fingers against your palms, rub your palms together, feel the friction, all that energy, the tickling, the tingling, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Whew. A good morning yawn to you. So welcome, welcome. Today we're talking about polarity and balance. And it's really the polarities of things, the black and white, the push-pull, the light and dark, give and take, all of that actually creates dynamic motion. I have this wonderful sort of 3D sculptural thing. It's kind of like a slinky, but it's the yin yang sign that's sort of twisted a little bit. And when you spin it, you can see the transformation of the yin sign into the yang sign, into the yin sign, into the yang sign. And it wasn't until I saw that in this sculpture that I realized that the yin yang sign that we're familiar with is a 2D representation of a 3D dynamic. And where there's this constant motion of one thing transforming into the other. And when we think of polarity and when we think of balance, that's actually what's going on, is that there's this transformation. It might look like there's a conflict, confrontation, opposition, but in so many ways, one feeds the other and creates this dynamic of motion. Good morning, Edna. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're discussing balance and polarity, or polarity and balance. And I guess I need oxygen this morning. Sorry. Rosalind says, is dark seen as a vice or simply what is not seen? I love that. Is dark seen at all? Because it's dark. That's a really good question too. Maybe the darkness that we believe we perceive is darkness that's coming to light. So interesting paradoxes there, right? So this notion of polarity as a dynamic motion, as a as an ongoing process of creation. You know, there when well, light can't exist without dark, dark can't exist without light, right? Good can't exist without bad, as concepts even. So as we look at this notion of polarity, this conversation comes up from a really, really profound and quite mystical, magical session I had with a client yesterday. And it was so archetypal. It was so powerful, where there was a fetus in this golden amber light. And then from that emerged, there was the serpent, and the serpent was both hunter and hunted. So the polarity was residing within the serpent. The serpent had been hunted and was a hunter, and predator and prey. And then there was the image of sort of one of those massive LED screens that has all the little lights in it, and between all the little lights were darkness, right? But all the little lights were flashing all different kinds of scenarios of beauty and horror, and flashing and flashing and flashing, and it was all just awe-inspiring. That it wasn't, it was just filled with a sense of wonder and awe at all these transformations that were happening in this light that was in a background of darkness. And then it came back to the fetus in this amber light. And it made me think of polarity and balance. And what was so interesting is that in that space between the light and the dark, there was infinity upon infinity upon infinity. And when we talk about, yesterday we were talking about spaciousness, and when we talk about polarity, you know, this transformation, this ongoing dynamic, there's a place of transformation, that infinitely small space between moments that is unbounded, that holds the multitude of universes. And if we can remember that the polarities are kind of the movement of a machine, but there's in that transition, there's a transition point. There's like the sweet spot, the magic spot, where of nothingness that is infinite everything. I love Deepak Chopra would call this the pregnant void, you know, where all possibility resides. This is the place where we can find our connection to a more vast universe, and kind of transcend the polarities. It transcends time, you know, and perhaps the polarities are part of the wheelworks of time, and our experience of the the world that we recognize, is created maybe through those polarities playing off against each other, and that the source of creation is the space in between, the space in between the moments. I think it's an interesting thing for us to ponder, to be looking at the polarization in the world right now. What happened also as part of this, I'm going to call it a vision, that was in this session yesterday, was that initially there was a rope tied around the person's heart that was pulling in opposite directions between chaos and beauty. And the rope was a coarse rope, and so splinters from the rope were lodging in the heart, and as this pulling was happening, and ultimately through the whole process of the vision, the splinters were removed from the heart, and the pulling, the rope fell away, and the pulling in the opposite directions, the constriction of that fell away, and what was left was awe and wonder. And it occurs to me that the pulling of the rope is in so many ways our resistance, our choosing of sides, our own polarization within ourselves, where we get into an argument, or we make a stand, and we're right, and we're insistent upon that rightness, and maybe all of this stuff is part of a greater balance. It's interesting to me, because there are questions of, well, when does it make sense to take a stand? What does it mean to take a stand? And what does it mean to be responsive rather than reactive? And when we think about polarities, there's a limitation to that, right? There's a third rail, there's a third way, there's a yes and there's a no, and then there's possibility. And that space of possibility is transcendent. It takes us beyond the realm of the polarity to that infinitude that is available to us in between. And when I think that there's a way, I think that what happened for this person in their experience was that they embodied both polarities, and in being able to embody both polarities, they were able to transcend them into this space of wonder and awe. And the space in which miracles reside, if that makes any sense to you guys. I'm wondering if you can connect to this notion of the space between polarities. We talk about balance, and when we think about balance, usually it's with the scales that are balanced, right? But what if there's this gentle juggling back and forth that's keeping a dynamic alive, that's creating the balance? It's constantly recalibrating, readjusting. And the thing is that those movements, like when there's balance, those movements are subtle. When we have these grand polarities, the movements trying to achieve balance are much more chaotic and disruptive. And we see so much of that in the world right now, you know, these extremes that are creating a very chaotic lurching from one direction to another. And maybe we are lurching forward. That's possible. Or maybe we're just lurching. I'm not sure. But when we can find a way to hold the polarity, then that is an alchemy of its own. By holding that polarity, then of necessity, we've become something more. We're no longer limited by the opposites. And what emerges is the spaciousness, again, back to spaciousness, that is unbounded, that's in between. You know, it's not even in between, it's transcendent. So what does it look like to hold those polarities? Interestingly, you know, on some level, it's about non-attachment. You know, when we are in a polarity, when we have a very strong vantage point, a very strong opinion, a strong immovable stance, then we've closed off a world of possibilities. And I'm not saying to be wishy-washy. I think that there's a place in which we can hold more space to be able to arrive at radically new perspectives. So Rosalind says, holding polarity feels like grasping at air because it has no form or anything to compare to. I guess it requires no attachment to the outcome. Thank you, Rosalind. And I think that's where I'm getting to also, is that we're talking about relinquishing attachment, which is frightening, right? Because we identify very much with our points of view and our perspectives and what we believe is right and our values. We identify with those things. And to be able to allow ourselves the freedom to be unattached. You know, it's interesting, what just came to mind is it possible to have commitment and be unattached? I don't have an answer for that. I guess maybe it depends on what our commitments are. Like if we have a commitment to listening, if we have a commitment to discovery, then that requires maybe that we have no attachment to the outcome, that we have a greater willingness to entertain what might emerge, to be able again and again and again to become somewhat comfortable with the unfamiliar. So I just want to mention that if you guys are putting in comments and I'm not responding, it's because I don't see them. So if you want your comments to be seen, you need to put them in on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page or YouTube channel, and then I should see them and I'll be able to respond. So this notion of good and bad, right and wrong, there's an emotion that generates from that. And the motion can be more chaotic or it can be more balanced. Like when we talk about the yin and yang, it's contrast, it's contrast that's moving and changing. And that creates that dynamic motion. And I guess it's a matter of the degree to which the polarity exists, how extreme it is, as to how smooth the motion is of change, the wheelworks of the universe. So how do we bring this idea into being? How do we embody this awareness around polarity? I don't think that we necessarily want the polarity to go away entirely, because then there would be no movement. And yet there's the potential, like with this third way kind of thing that embodies the polarity. There are new opportunities that we can't even fathom from within the polarity itself. So the question, I guess, is how do we hold difference? How do we hold these seemingly conflicting ideas and experiences of the world and of ourselves and of the political issues and the workings of our lives? There's the image from this vision of this flashing LED screen of beauty and chaos, and all of it being part of the same thing and held together by the blackness between, or the darkness between the light. So I remember years ago in the book Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda, he talked about our reality being an illusion, like a projection of a film, like and that it's really just a movie. And if we think about movies, we have all these polarities, this dynamic tension, the tragedy and the triumph, and all of this drama that creates a dynamic of movement and what we call life, right? And it's interesting to think about life in that way, and to allow ourselves to be the projector, to recognize ourselves as the projector rather than being enmeshed in the projection. I think, was it Socrates? I don't know if it was or not, talking about how we perceive shadows on the wall, rather than what the reality is. We are seeing these shadows and believing them to be the reality of our world. And I think that there is a way that we can deepen our experience of life to get more to its essence, to connect more deeply with our essential beingness, and flow with life through the gentle dynamic, the gentle polarity dynamic that allows for movement and flow and greater awareness. So I'm wondering what that might look like for you if we were to be able to tame the polarity a bit and also embrace it as part of this magnificently awe-inspiring experience. You know, to step back and say, oh my heavens, look at the magnificence of this, the creativity of it, the variety of it, to find ourselves in a place of wonder and to cultivate that, even in the face of the many challenges that life presents, to step back from the drama of it and recognize the drama so that we're not of it, you know, so that we can recognize it as part of our experience, but also recognize that we are not that there is a part of us that is the observer, the part of us that is beyond the polarities, the part of us that is able to be witness. And actually that was part of this vision, was experiencing being the witness to this grand dynamic of life with all of its beauty and chaos. And in that place, there's a different space for being. And it's available for us to step into. And what would the world be if we were able to step into that space, that expanded space of awe and wonder, and being the projector and being the witness? What would change in our experience of living and our experience of one another? What might be possible? What new possibilities might emerge? So I think I can leave you with that question today. And we get to explore this together. I'm so grateful to you for engaging with these conversations and your willingness to entertain what might be possible for us beyond our daily drama, you know, that we so often get deeply sucked into. So I think that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I encourage you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. And it's such a deep honor to be with you guys and explore these things together. So until next time, so much love and deep appreciation. I hope to see you again here really soon.